Namaskar, it's just past 10 p.m. IST. This is Late Edition. On the show tonight, we'll discuss the Rio Plus 20 summit that has got underway in the Brazilian capital 20 years after the Earth Summit brought to the world's focus, in fact, towards issues of climate change. Now, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is among around 100 world leaders in Rio de Janeiro for the Rio Plus 20 summit, and while commenting on the zero draft of the outcome document, India firmly rejected unilateral measures and trade barriers under the guise of green economy. Environment and Forests Minister Jayanti Natarajan, however, recognized green economy as one of the means to sustainable development and poverty eradication. She was speaking to the media on the sidelines of the Rio Plus 20 summit.
The agenda has been set before the world leaders in form of the draft document in the Summit for Sustainable Development taking place in Rio. In a good news for India, its suggestion of setting up of two important mechanisms, one for technology transfer and another for financing adopting green technologies, has been reflected in the document.
We are really happy with the outcome document, the draft outcome document. We have every reason to hope that it will not be reworked in any major way, and we feel that Brazil has done a very commendable job in putting out this draft, which reflect India's concerns in full.
India, though, is disappointed with the weak political will in developed countries to give developing nations more choices and say in implementation of objectives of green economy. She added that it will be greenwash if the process is not democratized.
When we talk about a green economy, it should be a really green economy which takes care of indigenous communities, a bottoms-up democratic approach, protects poor people, local involvement and with local governance in a democratic way. And it should not be an economy that is a pseudo-green, which is a greed economy which has been greenwashed.
India also firmly rejected unilateral measures and trade barriers under the guise of green economy, which was the buzz ahead of the deliberations in Rio. Bureau Report, DD News.
Well, our team in Rio also spoke to a few analysts about the pressures on the planet with regard to food security. More on this report from Mamta Chopra.
The challenge of feeding the world efficiently and equitably is considerable. If we have to feed the ever-growing population, it is time to rethink how we grow, share and consume our food. Food and agriculture sector offers key solutions for development and is central for hunger and poverty eradication, as is highlighted in Draft of Zero document.
For us, this draft helps describe what needs to be done, because what actually needs to happen is to change mindsets. We need a new paradigm. You know how India was so successful with other countries in the world in shaping a green revolution in agriculture in the 1970s. We need a similar kind of thing now.
At Rio Plus 20, civil society and NGOs are also raising issues which impact the issue of food security, like promoting vegetarianism, and that too in a way that catches your attention and force people to think about their food habits.
We are promoting veganism for a better environment and for a better health and also for the well-being of the animals. And we want people to know about it.
We see this conference and what's written on agriculture as something that helps move us along the way in changing the nature and the flavor of the global discussion on agriculture.
By 2030, the world population would need 50% of the more food grains, 30% of more water and 45% of more energy. How will this be made possible? Answers are being sought at this conference. With cameraman Gyan Singh, this is Mamta Chopra from Rio de Janeiro for DD News.
Well, and we're privileged to have in the studio Mr. Shyam Saran, former Foreign Secretary and also formerly the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on Climate Change and India's Chief Negotiator on Climate Change. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And we also have our correspondent, Rohan Singh, joining us. He's our environment correspondent and has been covering the environment now for over 10 years. Thanks, Rohan, for joining us. Let's start with you, Mr. Shyam Saran. First of all, the Kyoto Protocol is due to expire this year. And, when Ban Ki-moon inaugurated the summit, he said that, we have achieved much, but not much in terms of expectations. So against that background of expectations, how do you think, climate change negotiations have moved forward?
Well, climate change is only one aspect of what is being considered at Rio Plus 20 conference. So this is a separate track from the climate change negotiations. Now, you mentioned the Kyoto Protocol. One thing that I would like to clarify is that there is no expiry of the Kyoto Protocol in 2012.
Okay.
This is only the expiry of the first commitment period. And there is going to be a second commitment period in which the developed countries have to make commitments with regard to the absolute reductions in their emissions. So we should be very careful that we don't fall into the trap of accepting that the Kyoto Protocol is going to come to an end in 2012. But what I would say is that this particular document, which we have now, hopefully we will see it being formalized, is that a good job has been done in terms of reiterating and reaffirming some of the very key principles of 1992 Rio Convention. Agenda 21, the entire aspect of, common and differentiated responsibility, which we consider as, an extremely important principle. The incorporation of the principle of equity, which again is very important to us. The primacy to be given to the program for poverty eradication, economic and social development. These are very important to countries like India. And what we are very happy to see is that in the Rio Plus 20 outcome document, these principles are very clearly reflected. So that is an important gain for us.
Now, since you have been our chief negotiator, how difficult are these negotiations? Because people say they are very difficult. And, I'll just read out what the Secretary General of this conference has said. He said that, like all negotiations, there will be some countries that feel the text could be better and more ambitious. Others will feel that their own proposals could have been reflected, while still others might prefer, that the language be changed. But let me be clear, multilateral negotiations require give and take. How much give and take is there?
I think the document very clearly reflects some of that give and take. In multilateral negotiations, particularly when you have more than almost 180, 190 countries which are, involved, you are likely to come up with a document where each group or each group of country is able to see its own viewpoint reflected. So that is why there is a great balancing of different kind of ideas in such documents. And if you look through this document, that is precisely what has been done. And I think Brazil has done an excellent job in trying to reflect in this document those different strands of opinion. So I think it is important to recognize that there is a focus on, for example, green economy, which the Western industrialized countries are putting a lot of emphasis on. At the same time, as I mentioned, that the goal of poverty eradication has also been recognized, so that when you are pursuing green economy, you are not doing at the cost of economic and social development. So there is a very sensitive kind of balancing which has to be done, and I think this document has actually achieved that.
Now, since this summit has just come after the G20 summit, and the leaders of many of the developed countries were at the G20 summit and they're not here at the Rio summit. And so some would say that, economy is far more important than environment in their eyes. How would you look at that?
Well, I think there is no doubt that today the preoccupation, particularly amongst the advanced economies, is with the economic crisis, the global financial and economic crisis. And I'm not at all surprised that leaders like Obama or Angela Merkel or Cameron are not there, because I think they have far more important things to attend to rather than a multilateral conference on environment. So we have to recognize that this conference is taking place against the backdrop of an unprecedented global financial and economic crisis. And it is one of the reasons why there has to be a kind of a scaling down of expectations from this conference, which is, as you can see, the mood is very different from the mood which we had in 1992. No doubt.
In fact, let's bring in our correspondent Rohan Singh here. Rohan, Mr. Shyam Saran says that the mood is very different from 1992. Put this into perspective for us, because what was it back then? How different were the expectations in 1992?
Exactly, Mark. A lot has changed since 1992. From Rio to Rio Plus 20, the economies have changed. The politics have changed. 20 years back, it was like the developed countries who had the money and who the developing countries were seeking jobs. Now we know that they are suffering from economic crisis and they are also looking for jobs. So the whole economics have changed. If you look at now the other issues like population increase and all, so you see the issues have completely changed. But what has not changed is there's still a concern, like the emissions are still on rise, population is on rise, poverty eradication is going to be a key issue. So although the economies have changed, still the key concern remains same, and that is the climate change and its impact on the economies. Still, I mean, Mark, 20% of the world population still has access to 80% of the world resources. So that is the concern. How to equity is going to be a very important issue in this summit. Although Rio in 1992, it was it was not the first time the climate change was put up in the global forum, but it was the first time that it became an international issue. Now, no international negotiation is without considering environment as a factor. Right. So Rio 1992 was for the first time it actually put environment in an international forum, and since then we know a series of negotiations have happened. Rio was responsible for making a global deal on biodiversity and then clearing the way for Kyoto Protocol and all. So if today environment is a buzzword, if climate change is a buzzword, it's the credit goes to Rio 1992.
Right. So, Mr. Saran, then, as Rohan was saying, the focus now would be on jobs, on green jobs. Everyone needs jobs. I mean, it's not the advanced world is looking for jobs, and we are looking for jobs as well. How would you put into context what this green economy is all going to be? I mean, what is the green economy, really?
I think in a very broad sense, green economy means that you must have development which is ecologically sustainable. There is also the fact, which we also recognize, that we are living in a resource constrained world. Mm-hmm. That means the kind of availability of resources in terms of water, in terms of minerals, in terms of energy resources, all these are now facing finite limits. Therefore, even our own economic and social development strategies will have to take that into account. Right. We cannot have a strategy of growth which depends entirely upon extraction of resources. You have to move to a different kind of a strategy. Recognizing that, what we are saying is that the new jobs, employment generation, will come from a different kind of strategy of development, a development strategy which in fact looks at sustainability. Energy. Right. Unless you move to renewable energy, you are going to face a very major problem. Now, the new jobs, therefore, the green jobs that we are talking about should actually come from the renewable energy industry. There should be greater investment in that. Right. We are talking about the limitation of resources. Now, this makes it very important for us to develop recycling. Okay. Recycling industry. By expansion of that industry, you create jobs. So when we are saying green economy and seeking jobs through green economy, this is what we mean, that let us invest in that shift which is required from the current strategy of development which is ecologically not sustainable, right, to a strategy of development which can be sustained over a period of time, and also which keeps in mind the kind of balance that there must be, or what we say intergenerational balance. Okay. That is, we don't use up everything so that the succeeding generation faces a great deal of problems. So this is what is, to our mind, this is what green economy should be.
And in going about reaching there, we still have to have this principle of common plus differentiated responsibility. Can you put that in perspective?
So, yes. Our viewpoint is that most of the challenges that we are facing today, like climate change, energy security, even food security, all these are in the nature of cross-cutting challenges. What do I mean by that? That is, these are challenges which cannot really be solved through the action of one country or even a group of countries, no matter how powerful they are. Okay. So you need basically a collaborative response. That is, we have to treat this as a global challenge, and the only kind of effective response to that is going to be a global collaborative response. But you cannot have a global collaborative response which is not based on the principle of equity. There has to be equitable burden sharing so that everyone contributes. It is not that India is saying we will not contribute, but what we are saying is there has to be equitable burden sharing so that we can make that shift as quickly as possible, but with everyone sharing the burden in an equitable manner in line with our capacity.
What is equitable, sir? Would it be per capita, or because per capita would be, one would say that India's population is so large that, you know, per capita obviously we will come down.
You know, one cannot say that merely because you have a large population, therefore, you know, you should not have access to either resources or to finance. We are talking about human beings. You cannot say that one group of human beings ought to get less than another group of human beings. I think that's not the right way of approaching this. Obviously,
would we say overall greenhouse gas emissions or per capita?
It has to be per capita.
It has to be per capita.
It has to be per capita. Otherwise, how is it equitable?
How is it equitable?
You cannot say, as I said, that a group of people merely because of the accident of birth, they are living in a country which is heavily populated, should have less access to resources than those who are living in a country which has less density of population. I don't think that is a sustainable, morally sustainable or ethically sustainable kind of position to take. But we are not saying that this has to happen tomorrow.
Right.
What we are saying is that we must be on that path of equitable burden sharing. And very importantly, we as India are also prepared to put in our contribution because we have scientific talent, we have, you know, technical resources, we have a highly skilled manpower available in this country. So there are ways in which we can join our effort together with those of other major countries to really deal with these global challenges.
Then why push for technology transfer if we have the capability ourselves? I mean, one can invest in our capability, we understand that, but are we actually asking, you know, the advanced countries already have this, give it to us?
We are somehow or the other trying to put this in the context of what India wants. It's not a matter of what India wants. It is what we are saying is the global response. And in that global response, technology transfer has to be there. And again, why do we say reaffirm the Rio Convention? It is not India asking for technology transfer. It is a commitment which is there incorporated in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it's not that a demand is being made by India or a group of developing countries that you must give us technology. It is a commitment that you have made. That there has to be technology transfer. And when India talks about technology transfer, it is not saying, I will not give anything, only you have to give. What we are saying is, let us create a regime where you can contribute technology, but I can also contribute technology. So it is an issue of, are we willing to have a collaborative response or we have a competitive response? What the West is saying is, you know, governments don't have technology. It is with the private sector. I know we have to take into account intellectual property. We are saying that if you agree that humanity is facing an elemental challenge to its own survival, then it is important that our response should be equal to that challenge. And that equal response can only come if we pool our resources together, including technology.
Right. Rohan, if we talk about the themes at this summit, Rohan, green economy as well as poverty eradication, how did these themes come about actually?
Mark, the two prime themes, the green economy and poverty eradication, the base document of this summit is a report by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, which says, it puts a very interesting figures that if the world, if actually it invests 2% of its GDP every year in clean top 10 green sectors, then it can actually kickstart the whole economy of the world and it can transform the economies. So that is it puts very interesting figure that if we just spend invest 2% of our GDP, we can create by the year 2050 we can create 15 to 60 million jobs. We can reduce carbon emissions by 1/3. So it is very interesting data. India, as Mr. Sharan said, it is not in conflict over the issue of green economy. It only wants that the approach should be bottoms up, and it cannot be dictated. The terms cannot be dictated. We are contributing our bit, and also we only want it the definition of green economy. The green economy should not be unaffordable to the poor. So this is what India wants.
Right. Also, what is missing in this, draft document from the expectations, from what people expected?
Well, Mark, the draft document, for in India's perspective, is quite good. We are satisfied with the draft document, and there are so many things in this draft document that India wanted to put two words like common and differentiated responsibility and equity, which are in accord with the basic Rio principles, and that is there. So for India's perspective, it's very good. The draft document is we are satisfied with it, and but yeah, and there's some concerns from the Western countries that things they say that the draft document does not forces anybody to do anything. I mean, so there's
talking about commitments. There are no commitments.
Yeah,
what about from the ocean's point of view? I mean, is everything all clear there? Or sustainable development goals, are they being defined?
Well, oceans there is a global commitment in this draft document that by the year 2025 we will be the draft document actually makes commitment to work towards it. But the issue of governance of high seas, that has been deferred for a few years. Also, the issue of subsidies on fossil fuels, it was the draft document actually it wanted to be the approach was to be phase out the subsidies in the days to come. It is there in the draft document, but the wordings have been diluted. So these are some issues which the countries are now concerned with.
Right, Mr. Shyam Saran, what about these subsidies on fossil fuels? They are saying that they should be phased out, and in fact they should be taxed. I mean, carbon tax should be imposed, but we can see in our country that's not likely to happen.
Two things. There is a commitment on the part of India. If you look at, say, the G20 outcome documents, there too we have given a commitment that we will phase out over a period of time these fuel subsidies. But at the same time, we have also said that due to the need for ensuring that the interests of the poorer sections of society, these are met, we will have more targeted support programs. So, for example, the UID is one of the initiatives in this regard, that while we phase out the subsidies with the huge amounts that we have at the moment, but we will make certain that those who require support, they do get that support. And that principle has been accepted by the international community as well, that kind of support will continue to be required in countries like India, which have still a major challenge of poverty eradication. So the phasing out of subsidies is something that we accept. It's a question of how soon that is achieved, and secondly, while achieving that we do not sacrifice the interests of the most vulnerable sections of our society. By the way, well, I mean, in India, if you see, we have a coal tax which has been put in the budget last year, and in India, actually, if you compare our energy prices with the energy prices in some other advanced economies, in comparison to our per capita income, for example, actually energy prices are very high.
Very high, absolutely.
And it is a fact that if you look at the energy component of GDP growth in India, the energy intensity of GDP growth in India has been consistently coming down. Which means we are using less and less energy for increase in income, GDP, than in the past. So I think India has a fairly good story to tell, despite the fact that yes, I think we have very large subsidies, but we should put it in some perspective.
But should we be moving towards carbon credits, for instance? You know, companies that use clean technologies get some certain tax benefits?
Well, we have gone about in a somewhat different way. What we have put in place is a Energy Conservation Act, which has identified about 15 industry groups which are very highly energy intensive. In the first phase, we have picked up about 9 such industry groups, which includes things like petroleum, power, cement, paper and pulp. These are all energy intensive industries which have been selected. The legislation says that they should have compulsory energy audits.
Okay.
And on the basis of the benchmarks that are being set, you will have a preferential energy efficiency trading system.
Okay.
So those who are achieving better than the benchmark get credit. Those who don't achieve the benchmark have to pay a penalty.
Right.
So on that basis, a trading system like a carbon trading system is being put in place. But this is broader than just carbon trading.
So we're running short of time. Can you tell me what is going to come out of these sustainable development goals? I mean, they are voluntary now, and are these things like our sustainable development goals, things you're talking about? Because they've not been defined in this draft document.
They cannot be very precisely defined because of the fact that various countries have different kinds of challenges in terms of sustainability. So what the document, if I have read it correctly, says that we have to work on these 3 pillars of sustainable development, which is economy, social, environment. But how we actually pursue those will have to be on the basis of what our national requirements are. This is what I think the minister was trying to put across, that we have to interpret this in the light of our own experience. So that is something which will continue to be discussed, continue to be negotiated, I think, in the coming days. As I think it was pointed out that this is a document which does not at this point contain many commitments. It is a reiteration of commitments which have been made before, but it does allow for a further negotiating process to refine some of the concepts and to see whether or not we can do some implementation in the future.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Shyam Saran, for being with us on Late Edition. Thanks very much, Rohan. Well, India, G77 and China, will block the developed countries from making the summit prescribe any time-bound action against fixed targets for sustainable development goals. Well, India had said that the most important issues at the summit would be the institutional framework for achieving SDGs and the green economy. And this framework should balance, as Mr. Saran was saying, the 3 pillars of the economy: growth, social equity, and common but differentiated responsibility. So if SDGs are to be achieved internationally, India says it should be only through common but differentiated responsibility. The intergovernmental process has to work out commitments. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.